Hey Mustangs, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the first 7 community relationships. In this video you want to keep in mind the big ideas that we've discussed so far. So you want to think about interdependence, you want to think about balance, and you want to think about survival. So with every single relationship that we look at, you want to keep those 3 things in mind. So the first major relationships that we see are flocking and herding. So with flocking and herding, it's a group of the same species moving around together. With flocking, it's a group of the same species of birds moving around together. With herding, it's usually land mammals moving around together. An example would be like a herd of sheep. And then survival, impact on survival is huge. So if we take a look at these herds here, there's power in numbers. That's the key to understanding flocking and herding. When you have a whole bunch of individuals together like this, there's more eyes looking out for predators to see if there's going to be an attack coming. You could kind of think of, I think about this when I go to the beach. Whenever you get in the water, or whenever I get in the water, I think about the fact if there's people further out, I feel a lot safer because if there's a shark, it's more likely to get them instead of me type deal. So when you're talking about a herd and all these individuals together, it increases individual chance of survival depending on how many there are. So if there's more individuals, it increases your chance of survival because someone else might get eaten instead of you. And also many predators are intimidated by a group of that many together. When you have that many, it can be really scary because remember predators are not mindless hunters, mindless eaters. They want to be safe, they want to be careful because they can't afford to get injured. So power in numbers, looking out for safety increases individual chance of survival, and it kind of scares off many predators. Schooling is basically just flocking and herding in the water. So a group of fish moving together, example would be a school of tuna. Impact on survival, power in numbers once again. Okay, so we see with this school of fish moving around, the shark coming through trying to get a fish. It's hard. That's another thing with flocking and herding too. When there's that many individuals, it's very difficult for a predator to single out one individual. So that shark going through might not get any fish because it's so disoriented by all these numbers, and it makes it harder for it to focus and choose one individual. So that increases the chance of survival of the fish moving around together. Cooperative hunting. So when we look at cooperative hunting, it's not just simply organisms, hunting together. There's usually some sort of planning involved when we talk about cooperative hunting. So all the individuals have like a special job or task that they have to do in order to make the hunt successful. And with cooperative hunting, this is going to increase chances of survival for the predators because they're more likely to get food. If they're working together, they're more likely to succeed in the hunt. With migrating has to do with favorable environmental conditions. We already saw that the environment can have a huge impact on survival and success of organisms. So here with migration, organisms will leave one area that is going to become unfavorable and go to another area that is more favorable. Think about how many organisms migrate during the winter. So in the winter, when the conditions start to become unfavorable, there starts to become less food, less water, maybe even less space available because of the colder temperatures. Organisms leave that unfavorable condition and go find a better, more favorable environment. And that's what migrating is all about. So leaving one area, going to another, and that's going to increase chances of survival. Because if they stay in that one unfavorable environment, they're going to run out of food, water, or space. If they move to another one, they're more likely to survive. And then once conditions change, they move back. So they usually move back and forth between 2 places when we talk about migrating. Swarming. If you think about insects, many insects are really small. So swarming is a defense mechanism that increases chance of survival for insects. So when insects feel threatened, they can all attack at once. One single insect can't do much, but if they're all attacking at once, that can be very, very dangerous. For the individual that's being swarmed, of course. But it's going to increase survival for the insects themselves. Intra-species competition. So with intra-species competition, we're looking at individuals of the same species. The key is right here, intra versus inter. Intra means within the same species. So organisms fight for survival within the same species, and this is beneficial not just for the individual. This is beneficial for the entire species as a whole. Because of intra-species competition, the individuals with the best traits are more likely to survive. because they are more successful in the competition against others of their own species. So with intra-species competition, the strongest survive, or individuals with the best traits, not necessarily the strongest, but just the ones with the best traits survive, and they pass on better genes to the next generation. So that increases the survival of the entire species, not just the individual. All right, and then finally, competition for mates. So this is very similar to intra-species competition. So here, it's usually males that are going to fight in order to mate with females. Examples are birds, which don't usually fight. Some do, but a lot of birds will compete with each other by singing, showing colors, dancing, and stuff like that. Deer, they usually fight like we see here, and elephant seals, which actually come to blows and actually fight as well. So the impact on survival here, once again, this isn't about the individual necessarily itself, but the fact that the ones that do have the best traits, that are more successful in this competition for mates, they pass those genes on to the next generation. So this helps the survival of the whole species when we talk about competition for mates. So if we take a look at males, of course, fighting here, and then this is a funny one. I like to watch this one. So these deer, this isn't usually how deer fight, but in this case, these young bucks are fighting, kind of like slap fighting here. So again, competition intra-species or competition for mates, it's focusing not just on survival of individuals, but how the winners of these competition impact the survival of the whole species.